tonight. I know a lot of you here in the room. My name is Pat Brady. I'm one of the founders of the Lincoln Forum, and thank you again for being here. I'm going to get through the thank yous first. First and foremost, I want to thank Deloitte, my former firm, for all their support of this event. Lauren Mistretta from Deloitte is on our board, and I know there are a lot of Deloitte people in the crowd. Deloitte, a fine organization, a great contributor to all things charity here in Chicago, and we're fortunate to have Deloitte as part of the Chicago community. Also to Summit Ridge Energy for buying a table here tonight. Summit Ridge Energy is one of the leading, if not the leading, solar energy provider in the state of Illinois, and we all saw with the governor's new initiatives and new capital plan and budget that solar is going to be a big part of his program, and Summit Ridge Energy is going to be on the forefront of that, so thank you, you all for your sponsorship. Also like to thank our guests, which I'm going to let our host here, the Honorable Sylvia Perez from Fox 32, introduce them. But I also, and I always do this, I want to do a little background on the Lincoln Forum because I think it's important. The Lincoln Forum was founded some 18 months ago by me, my Democratic friend Eric Edelstein, a big-time Democratic operative, Lauren Mistretta, Tracy Slutskin from River Strategies, and right now I think we need to give Tracy a big round of applause because this never happens without her. And more important than that applause is that is one of the preeminent women-run PR firms in the state of Illinois, so if you ever have any public relations needs, please consider Rivers Strategies. We also have Judy Gold, former state representative Julie Curry, and several other board members that have been with us from the beginning. And the whole premise of the Lincoln Forum is over the last decade or so, turn on either cable channel, and you hear a lot of yelling and screaming and people fighting. But people really aren't talking with each other, they're talking at each other, and they're not talking about policy solutions, they're talking about nothing, yelling and screaming at each other because it plays to ratings. And Eric and I did battle on television during campaigns going back to 2008, but we never had a disrespectful moment. We kind of came up with this concept, and we do it on WGN radio every Thursday from 7 to 8. I think we have legitimate discussions, and I have nothing but respect for him. I don't agree with him, and I've tried to teach him the value of conservative thinking that's not working. In fact, it's not working anywhere right now, but I'm trying. But that's why we started the Lincoln Forum. We've had a lot of success so far in the first 18 months. In fact, our first guest was Sheriff Tom Dart, probably got some of the best reviews that we've ever had for one of our programs. And he actually, Tom and I have known each other for 32 years, and we started in 1987 as assistant state's attorneys here in Cook County. And we probably both came to the same realization. Tom had been involved in the state's attorney's office a little longer than I have, but it didn't take very long of being an assistant state's attorney and working in some of these felony courtrooms and seeing the problem we're going to talk about tonight. And it was the same people, they maybe not in our courtroom, cycling through the system. We probably in our careers saw 2 generations of young men primarily fade into the system and never be productive citizens. I'll never forget, you could stand in the courtroom and see the rap sheets and see where they'd been through the system. There's nobody there to help them. There's nobody there to show them there might be a way out other than go back to gang banging. And that's why I think, and we all know that this topic we're going to talk about tonight with a esteemed panel of experts about how to break this cycle of violence. This is the biggest issue facing the city of Chicago, and it's an exciting time. We have a new mayor who was a former federal prosecutor, I think gets the problem probably better than anyone. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to our moderator, Sylvia Perez.
Hello. I'm going to stand up to start. Oh, I see a lot of familiar faces. Hi, everybody. Great to see you. Thanks for coming out. We have a wonderful turnout. I think, as Pat was saying, obviously this is an issue that is affecting all of us, and it is an exciting time to see what the mayor is trying to do. She's announced some recent initiatives that we're hoping will make a difference in the long run. So again, this is the Lincoln Forum, A City in Crisis, Youth Violence and Breaking the Cycle. How many of you got to read that study that was in the papers last week from New York University that talked about the life expectancy in Chicago in Streeterville versus Inglewood? Raise your hands. Okay. Wasn't that stunning? So for those of you who did not get to see it, there's a 30-year difference when it comes to life expectancy. The average age in Streeterville, the person will live to be 90. In Inglewood, it plummets to the age of 60. So obviously there's a lot of issues involved there with healthcare and other things, but violence is definitely playing a role. Right now in June of 2019, Chicago is roughly on pace with last year's murder numbers. Do you guys have any idea to date from January how many murders Chicago has seen? And raise your hands if you know, or yell it out. Any idea? How much? 700. Anybody else? Fortunately, it's lower than that, a lot lower, but you're close. Okay. So this morning when I read it on the news, it was 195, and I just checked the numbers. This was since 8 o'clock this morning. The number's now 199. Okay, this is how fast this is happening. So you hear about it on the news, you read about it in the papers, and you think, what can be done about this? And some people say, there's nothing that can be done. It's hopeless. But we're here to tell you tonight, it is not hopeless. And we're going to prove it to you by listening to these people's stories, because they have gathered here to tell you about what they're doing to help the city of Chicago and to help cut down on the violence issues that we have. So our hope is that you are inspired tonight after you hear their stories about what they're doing, and we want you to leave here and think about what you can do. So let's get started right away, because we want to make this an interactive discussion. We want you guys involved. If you have questions, feel free to raise your hand, ask questions, because this is about you too. It's not just about them. If you want to know how they went about to do things or what you can do to help them, please stand up and ask questions. We want to get you involved, okay? We're going to start with Sheriff Tom Dart. Wave at the crowd, Sheriff Dart. Everybody knows him, right? You've been doing this, he told me, 13 years now, right? Cook County Sheriff. Sheriff Dart is known for implementing programs that help reduce violence in our city. He has received national recognition for this. He's responsible for introducing, among other things, the Sheriff's Anti-Violence Effort, also known as SAVE. The program at the Cook County Jail, it involves intensive therapy and life skills training for 18 to 24-year-old men who are incarcerated. This is just one of the many things he does, but I think this is probably what we'll be talking about a lot with him tonight. And then over the end, the only female in our panel, this is Valerie Groth. Valerie is the former CPS. Sure, you can clap for Valerie. She deserves it. Valerie is a former CPS social worker and founder of the Ryan Banks Academy. And I'm excited for you to learn about this, because this was new to me tonight. And Valerie and I are going to be talking after tonight. It's a wonderful, innovative school for at-risk youth. The school just completed its first year as a day school, and soon it will be the first inner-city boarding school in the city of Chicago. And Valerie's also the author of The Power of the Possible, The Dire State of Inner-City Education, and One Woman's Revolution to Fix It. So welcome to you, Valerie. Then we have another familiar face, that is Arnie Duncan. Arnie Duncan is the managing partner of the Emerson Collective and Chicago CRED, which stands for Creating Real Economic Destiny. He's a former U.S. Secretary of Education, former Chicago Public Schools CEO. Chicago CRED's mission is to achieve a transformative reduction in Chicago gun violence by targeting men identified as being at the highest risk of being shooters or being shot. And Arnie will be explaining more about that for us in just a bit. And then, last but not least, we have Carl Allegretti. Carl is a managing partner of Deloitte Chicago practice with leadership responsibility for more than 4,500 professionals in the Chicago market. Carl has a long list of affiliations that really reflect his commitment to giving back. And it's actually Carl's story that brings us here tonight, because Carl shared a story with someone from the Lincoln Forum, and they said, you know what, we got to do a story about this. So originally I was going to start with Carl to share his story, but Carl's story would not be possible without Arnie Duncan. So Arnie, you do the short straw, and we're going to start with you tonight. So I had the honor and privilege of interviewing Arnie and learning more about Chicago CRED when he first came back to Chicago to start the program. So very impressive program. But I want to start, Arnie, by asking you if you can explain to everybody what Chicago CRED is, what you guys are doing, why you decided to come back home to Chicago and work on this particular issue.
Thanks, Sylvia, and I'll try and do this pretty succinctly. Chicago's home. Every opportunity I had all my life, educationally, athletically, socially, culturally, Chicago gave me. So it was never a question of coming home. That's what my family and I wanted to do. I always say I think we're sort of motivated by our successes, but we're also haunted by our failures. And when I led the Chicago Public Schools, lots of things I'm proud of. I could give you all kinds of the statistics that are positive. But on my watch, my 7.5 years, basically on average every 2 weeks we lost a child, a student due to gun violence. And that was an area where I don't think I failed. I know we collectively failed. And so coming home, recognizing that was a crisis facing the city, recognizing what we were doing to children on the South and West Side and having them grow up with a level of fear and trauma that's just unimaginable, it's not right, it's not fair, and it's not their fault. So I really want to thank the sheriff. I spent a decent amount of time, I'm sorry, yeah. I spent a lot of time talking to men in Cook County Jail, and he was, we sort of knew each other, but didn't know each other well, and he opened the doors, which was unbelievably generous. He had an amazing superstar, Ellie Montgomery, working with him. And people think this is funny when I say it, but it's not funny. I much prefer the conversations in jail to testifying before Congress. It's a much more honest conversation. You get real feedback. I tested all my ideas. Guys would say this makes sense. Guys would say this is crazy. And there's no facades. There's no faking. And that was my focus group. I kept going back, and there are a couple epiphanies. One is that almost no one is getting rich on the streets. And there's this myth that all these people are making all kinds of money selling drugs. And I kept testing, like, we all have a price point. What's your price point? What would it take to get out of the street life? And for most guys, it was $11, $12, $13 an hour. It's peanuts. And I said, if we could provide a job for that kind of money, like, we're out of this life. And it took me a while to honestly believe it, internalize, but I heard it enough times, enough different groups, that sort of started the premise of our work. So that to fast forward, that we started with 30 men in September 2016, and Brendan, who you'll hear about, was in that first cohort of guys in Roseland. We now, with our partners across the city, are working with closer to 500 men. We help provide job opportunities. We have amazing life coaches. Ali is here, and amazing men who have been through a lot and are coming back to help create opportunity. Help guys with trauma care. Many get high school diplomas. They write their autobiographies. And the goal is to work with us for, on average, about a year, and then spin them off into the legal economy. Because these are men. They're not boys. They're going to make a living. They're going to eat. They're going to pay rent. They're going to take care of their children. They're just going to do it in the legal economy or on the streets, and that's sort of up to us.
Arnie, can I ask you, where are you getting these men from? Who are they?
These are men who step up and want to do something different. No one has to work with us. There's no court mandates. We have basically a waiting list in virtually every community. We have street outreach teams that go out and talk to guys. We got a lot of referrals straight out of Cook County Jail. Guys coming out would just come straight to us. And they're tired of being shot. They're tired of police chasing them. They're tired of living a level of violence. They want something different. And people often say it's great you're giving a second chance. I actually reject that. I think in many cases we're given a first chance. And every system, our schools, their families, churches, nonprofits, everything has failed them. So our thing, I would say we're trying to solve an economic problem, not a crime problem. Our theory of action only works if there are jobs at the back end. And we had 2 employers come up today and talk very seriously about hiring our guys, and I can't tell you how much that means to me. Otherwise, we're selling false hope. Carl and I knew each other from years ago. Carl's a CEO of a conservative accounting firm, but he has a big heart. And Carl took a risk and did some things that he probably shouldn't have done, and worked with his team. And he hired an amazing young man from our first cohort, Brendan Taylor. And I always say, I don't want charity. I want this to be an investment. I want you to understand the talent and the intelligence and the resilience and the leadership skills of our young men. And he has a slightly different recruiting pool, but our young men are going to add a lot of value to our city. And if we want to resolve this violence problem, we have to create jobs. We can't arrest our way out. The police can't solve this. Police are struggling mightily. They're amazing police. Sometimes police are part of the problem. So we can't, every time there's a homicide, ask Eddie Johnson, what are you doing? We have to ask our CEOs, what are they doing? And Carl's been extraordinary.
So Carl, this is definitely your time to share, because I said it was a discussion you had with someone from the Lincoln Forum that brought us here tonight, because you hired one of Arnie's young men. Tell us your story.
So just to pick up where Arnie left off, I've known Arnie a long time, and I heard him speak in October of 2016 at World Business Chicago about this issue. So then I got on his calendar and I said, Arnie, we want to help. Deloitte wants to get involved. We want to help you, support you. Do you need financial support? And I want you to listen to this because this says a lot. He said, Carl, we need no money. And the solution is not, money's important, but it's about all of us getting engaged. I need you, Carl. I need the leaders in this city to hire these men. I need you to get involved and hire them. And as Arnie said, I work with a conservative accounting firm, and I said, okay, where do I start? A few months went by, and Arnie placed a call to me, and what he said meant a lot. He said, Carl, I got 3 guys that I would trust my kids with. So you listen to that statement. I said, okay, bring them into the office. And 2 of them came in. 2 of them came in June of 2017, and we started this journey. All in their 20s, both of them in their 20s did not have their high school degree. You know what? We couldn't do anything with an individual without a high school degree, and neither could they. So I said, you get your degree, and we'll start this journey. One of them stayed in touch with me, Brendan. He sent me a text that night. Listen, it was not easy coming into Deloitte. Big organization. He came in, and he sent me a text that night and said, thank you for taking the time. You're a busy man. I really appreciate it. We started a journey, and I want you to think about that this individual came into a large firm, and he reached out after I gave him my card. And said, okay, I want your high school degree by the holidays. We didn't get it done, okay? We didn't get it done, and it became a we. And I said, okay, you got 2 months. You got 2 months to get this done. And so I sent him a text. The only way I would send a text to my other 2 boys, 6 o'clock one morning, I said, we done yet? And he responded, I finished at 3 a.m., and he sent me a copy of his diploma that he got a couple weeks later. So then I made the promise. I didn't know what I could do. We have a process. We have 6,000 people in Chicago. We have 100,000 in the U.S. We went through the process. All I could do was promise him an interview. And we started the process, the journey. And he did very well. And he got an offer. And then we started a background check. And I remember another text he sent me. We're going to make a great movie one day. He said, hey, Carl, you know I have a background, right? I said, Brendan, I know more about you than you know about yourself. But what I did know is I couldn't make this decision. But through the process, the farm, Brendan celebrated his 1-year anniversary with Deloitte last March. And I'll make 2 last comments and then we'll open it up. And we can do another one. I want people to walk out of here tonight to really consider this, because if I do one, great. If I get 10 organizations to do 10 and another 10, we can end up where Arnie wants to end up, because education, economic development is the solution. And people will give, Carl, you did a great thing. The farm did a great thing, but I can also say this, and I say this with all sincerity, Brendan made our organization better, right? So while we did something for an individual, he made a lot of other people better. And last comment, period. We're living this journey, and last summer Arnie called me on a Sunday. I got bad news. And this is what we're all living with. You could watch the TV, but we lived it. Brendan's been shot, and that one Saturday night when 70 people were shot and his best friend's been killed. So if you really want to understand what we are trying to accomplish, where we need your help, in the cocktail reception, spend 5 minutes with Brendan, right? Because that's where the solution is. The other men here, if everybody embraces what we are all trying to do and give people a chance, right, we're going to go a long way in this great city.
That is a beautiful story. I think we all want to hear from Brendan a little bit if he feels good about it, okay? I'm going to give you a chance to get your breath first, and then I would love to hear from you. So we have two more people we still need to hear from. Let's hear from Sheriff Dart first. You have done many different programs that have been model programs that have been looked at across the country as a way to cut down on the violence and a way to prevent people from returning to jail. Let's start with you were started 13 years ago. You must have seen a pattern that you thought, wait a minute, guys are coming in, they're leaving, and they're coming back. I got to do something about this. Is that how the SAFE program came about?
Yeah, you know, whether it's from my time as sheriff or when I was a prosecutor, the best I could describe like our criminal justice system and the way we treat people who engage with it, the best I could describe it is indifference. That it's there, the people are just numbers, we cycle them in and out, and that's just life and how it works. And there was just no real thought to it. So you can take it from the standpoint of sort of the humanistic side. You know, these are individuals and they should be treated as an individual, and the issues are unique to every person, the neighborhoods are unique, and let's try to fix it. Or you can sit there from the standpoint of fiscally, this is not working. I mean, the results are horrible. I mean, I don't know any company in the planet that could have a 70% failure rate, which is the recidivism rate, and still be in existence. And yet, we just kept doing that. There was never this great outcry where people looking at data said, listen, the criminal justice system is broken, it's not working, the product that's coming out is horrible. Everyone just kept doing the same thing. And so when I became sheriff, it was something where it became rather obvious on many levels that we need to really sort of rethink what we were doing here. And some of it was frankly easier than others, and one of it was like dealing with the mentally ill. I mean, it was complete newsflash to me that our society collectively had put their heads together and said, you know what, when people have a disease, a mental health issue, we're going to lock them up. That's, you know, we'll deal with them that way. Which I always thought to be quite, you know, strange, because if you're going to do that, realistically, why should you stop there? I mean, we really should go after the diabetics and the cancer patients and stuff like that. I mean, they got an illness too. Let's lock them up too, because that's what we're doing. And that's literally what we were doing. That's not me playing games with words. That's literally what we're doing. We had people who were ill. They'd know where to go. They would wander in the streets. They didn't have their medications. They'd come across the worst conceivable people, not because they're bad people, but people who were never trained to deal with them, law enforcement, and then they ended up in jails. So I was like, okay, well, we got to get our arms around that, because that's an embarrassment at minimum for our society. But then, you know, the amount of people who were locked into jails because they were poor, and we just had thousands of those. Where literally the event that got them there, the criminal act, was nothing that was going to shake anybody in this room. But yet they sat there because they couldn't come up with $100 or $50, and I kept saying to myself, okay, once again, what is the purpose we're trying to solve here? Obviously, $50 doesn't mean we are afraid of this person, but yet we're going to hold them here. And the only reason they're sitting here, and I wouldn't be, is they can't come up with $50. And once again, what type of society are we? We're obviously a pretty broken one that's indifferent at best to other people. And so for us, it was always a question of, okay, how do we put strategies together that have success as our goal and treat people uniquely and individually? Realizing full well that there is evil in this world, and I have people at that jail who are evil, and I, you know, can debate people, what got them there, what caused it. We can have that debate. But I often told people, that's the smallest population I have. Let's deal with this bigger population. And that's why it was just so exciting working with Arnie. Honest to God, I know it's going to be a shock to you folks, but I don't usually get a lot of people knocking on my door saying, hey, I'd love to work with you, Tom. It's usually quite the contrary. Usually it's like they see my phone on caller ID and they do not pick up. And it was amazing. Arnie came in there and said, listen, Tom, we have this program we're working on, and here's what we're up to. We understand you're doing something similar and have different parts of different things going in a different way. And it's like, Arnie, please, whatever you want, it's yours. And he did. Arnie came in there and sat with people. It wasn't something where he did a flyby and, you know, whatever. No, he was spending more time talking to these folks than their own lawyers had ever talked to them. And in doing that, as Arnie said, I've had the most interesting, enlightening conversations in my life talking to people that have been housed in our place. And in doing that, you come up with the notion that, okay, this is fixable. This is fixable if you're thoughtful. Okay, if you're indifferent, it's not going to work. If you're thoughtful, this can work. And then what you do is you come up with the different strategies you put together for this. And so we have different programs we've been running. We've run wild programs. And I mean, we literally, I mean, a lot of people, particularly people in the political world, as I know you may have heard of, politicians have a tendency to lie. Um, Objectively, we are the model for the country. We are, and it's because we have this unique approach. We have programs that people have never heard of. Our programs, we study all of them. We literally look at the metrics. Is it working? Is it moving the envelope? We experiment with things. But at the end of the day, so much of what we do inside the jail can't work unless we have people like Arnie on the outside, because Arnie mentioned the phrase about like false hope and things like that. So we work with people, and we work with them not just to teach them a skill, but we work with them to teach them to think differently. So when I have chess programs and people think it's just one of my weird programs, it's like, no. It's getting people to think 3 moves ahead, 5 moves ahead, that there's consequences to moves, things like that. And so you can do all of those things, but at the end of the day, if you aren't connecting them with people with a plan like Arnie's folks, to connect them with real jobs, at the end of the day, what are you doing? Because once again, we spend a great deal of time on data. And for people in this room, you'd sit there and say, well, of course you do. Our jail was no different than every other jail and prison in this country. They had no data. There is no data. And when I became sheriff, our entire jail management system was a DOS-based computer system. And my predecessor was the one that got moving on changing that. And then we added to it to where we have the state-of-the-art one. Well, why is that significant? I'm sure particularly the people from Deloitte can attest to this. If you want to look at any society and say whether or not they value something, look at what they study. If you aren't studying it, analyzing it, you do not value it. And in the criminal justice system, there is no data because no one cares. These are anonymous people. They're just people that churn through the system and who gives a you know what. It's just like, and so off we go. So we put all this time and energy into the data, and it's been remarkable what it finds, but a lot of it screams out the obvious, what you'd expect, that the people that come into my custody, virtually all of them leave and go straight from there back to the community they came from. And that's where there's this constant misunderstanding in the public, and I don't blame them. I mean, I'm the only one that's really gets to enjoy my fun little world that I live in. But people confuse prisons and jails. Well, in jails, not only virtually everyone's waiting on their trial, but the other part of that is that there's this notion that people sit in jails and then they all go down to prison, and the prisons will deal with whatever reentry, whatever you're talking about. 85% of the people that come into my jail go straight from the jail back to the community. And yet jails never looked at it as their job to try to come up with programs, work with people like Arnie, to come up with things to do with people, because there was always like this notion, who cares? They're all going to prison anyways, and they weren't. Anybody who cared to look would have noticed that, but no one cared. And so jails are literally at the hub if you're going to get at the heart of these problems. And sure enough, when you look at the patterns, in which we do, where people go once they leave our jail, they're going right back to the communities that A, have violence issues, but B, are the ones that are literally devoid of services. So whether you're talking about mental health services, you name it, they're not there. And so for us, it's been a little bit of a long slog, but it's been exciting. It's been really enjoyable on our part, getting engaged in this issue on a whole different level. And so I just want one parting thing I want to just mention really quickly. The overarching issue that we're here on about the violence in the city of Chicago, it took a long time to get here, folks, okay? So anybody who's going to come here and try to sell you on this latest gimmick, you know, that we're going to put more cameras here or new data analysis here, that's not going to work. It will not work. You have to start with working with the people who are engaged with the criminal justice system, trying to help them, give them opportunities, and big one, reestablish trust. Trust not just with police. People constantly will just talk with police, but trust with the entire criminal justice system. Because if you have families, and literally, as Pat had mentioned, generations of people who've been treated horribly by the criminal justice system, as they say, at best indifferently, but usually worse than that. Do you think they're going to want to work with us? Do you think they're going to want to try to fix problems, work with the police, work with law enforcement? It ain't going to happen. And so for us, whether it's working with people like Arnie and some of these other organizations where we funnel people from the jail, we work with them in the jail, then we funnel them to people on the outside, to where literally my police department, which the sheriff's office has its own police department, we moved primarily from the suburbs. Now we're in the west side of the city, and we've been there for over a year. And the results have been absolutely stunning. There's been decreases in crime in other areas of the city. Ours, the area where we're at, is decreased 3 times anybody else. And why is that? Is it because we're the greatest? No. It's because not only do we have a community policing model, but we work with the kids in the school, we work with the block clubs, and we spend as much time doing civilian work as we do police work. building trust. And so I guess it is only to say there is hope, that it is really bad. There's no two ways about it's really bad, but there's hope if you have strategies that are sort of the long game, which is not usually what politics are good at, because everybody wants something immediately. Everyone's always up for re-election. Everyone wants to get elected to something or other. So it's not suited perfectly for politics, but we can get there. We can get there.
That's very hopeful. Good message. Thank you. So obviously, from listening to these three gentlemen, it's obvious that incarceration is not the solution. Getting jobs and education, obviously, are the solution. And that's a perfect spot for us to introduce Valerie to you again. So Valerie, tell everybody about the Ryan Banks Academy. And it kind of, you were a social worker, and it kind of started through another sad story. So tell us how it all came about.
Yeah, thank you. So this all got started for me because I spent a lot of time working as a school social worker on the South Side in Chicago. And I loved it. I loved the kids. I loved the families. But I thought my job was really supposed to be a traditional therapist. So dealing with challenges that middle school and high school kids have around bullying, peer pressure, et cetera. But really my job was more crisis counseling, grief counseling, and supporting students who were dealing with significant challenges and trauma outside of school. So I saw so many of my kids getting lost to violence in the neighborhood, violence at home, just other effects of poverty. Homelessness was a big part of what a lot of my students struggled with, and essentially saw the lack of support in the school system. So I was one social worker to about 1,000 kids between multiple schools. And when you think about the national recommended ratio for a traditional school, let's say a Latin school or Whitney Young that has a lot of the resources, that ratio should be 1 in 250. And for a school like where I worked with at-risk youth, that population should be 1 in 40. So 1 in 1,000 is just impossible. If any of you have 1,000 clients, you can understand, but pretty much that's not happening anywhere else except here in the school system. And I don't blame CPS for that. That's a challenge we're seeing across the country as well. So I lost a lot of kids to those challenges, got really frustrated, and had the vision for we need a boarding school in Chicago to provide a great education, but also this wraparound supportive environment. And I did some research and I found that it's not a new model. So this is happening elsewhere, and in fact, a ton of other cities, almost all of the big metropolitan cities already have boarding schools. So they're in Miami, there are 2 in DC, they're in Baltimore, California, Colorado, Texas. Why not Chicago? The challenges, as we're talking about here tonight, are often harder here than in those big cities in terms of violence, homelessness. So if they can be successful elsewhere, why not Chicago? So really I had that dream for a long time, sat on it. I was working in the schools and wasn't sure how to build a school like this. And after losing far too many kids to violence, decided enough is enough. I had lost a lot of kids to challenges in the neighborhood. And back in 2012, after I lost a student I was very close with, named Ryan Banks, who was shot and killed on a Saturday night, sitting on the front steps of his house, not doing anything wrong, was just playing with his younger brother. So after losing Ryan, I realized I really have to make traction and make this happen. So I left CPS 5 years ago with the intention of building a boarding school. Also Ryan's aunt, Bridget, can you wave? She's in the audience today, and I really invite you to talk to Bridget later tonight if you can. She's a phenomenal person and has just been a rock for us as we've gone through this process. So we opened as a day school in September, as Sylvia said. Our vision is to become a boarding school as soon as possible. We're working towards that hopefully in the next year and a half. But it's not just Ryan. There are so many kids here in Chicago who we know need something like this. The stories that I can tell, we could go on and on about all the students who can benefit from something like this. Aside from the violence, one of the things that really drove me was working with so many kids who had challenges in their home environment. I think of 2 sisters that I worked with very closely who were chronically self-injuring and suicidal because of what was happening at home. And that was physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, neglect from parents, from paramours, from people going in and out of the house. And so these girls who were very bright and could have been Ivy League bound girls were just chronically depressed, cutting all over their arms, cutting down legs, stomach, all over their body, and attempting suicide. So we spent a lot of time trying to get them psychiatric placement, to get them safety. And one of the moments for me that I'll never forget was when their father said to the students, "I wish you would just kill yourself next time." And I realized in that moment that these girls are never going to make it. And it doesn't matter what kind of a school you're going to. You can have the best school in the nation. You can have the best teachers. But when you're going home to that and you don't have that basic support, love, or have your basic needs met, you're not going to make it.
Wow. Okay. I think this is a good opportunity. I'm going to open it up in a minute, but I think what I would like to do now is to ask both Arnie and Carl. You have some people here today that have gone through the CRED program, and I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I think this would be a good opportunity for maybe the audience to hear what a difference it has made in their lives and what we all here today can do to help others. So Arnie or Carl, do you want to see if one of your guys would want to say something?
So why don't I bring up my third son, Brendan? Why don't you come up here?
Brendan, Pat has a microphone for you. Yeah, you can just stand and talk to everybody. We want to know about what a difference CRED and Carl has made.
So, of course, my name is Brendan Taylor. Started the journey with Chicago CRED back in 2016, and 2019 I'm here with you all. It was a rough patch, just because, you know, I come from a very, very, very rough neighborhood, where it's pretty much product of my environment or, you know, adapt. So I adapted for a while, but I always had that thought, like, I want better. I want to do better for myself, you know. Seeing my mom struggle to take care of me, I'm like, you know, I got to do better for myself. So went through a challenging year, 2014 through 2016. I was arrested for something I didn't do, just wrongfully accused. Couldn't make bond, like he said, like Tom Dart said. Bond was $75,000. Couldn't make it. I mean, that's a house, you know what I mean? So, copped out due to me not being able to come home and, you know, spend Christmas and other holidays with my family. Copped out, was on probation for about 2 years. Literally, I want to say like 2 weeks after me getting on probation, I was working a job, waste management to be exact. Horrible setting. I have allergies, dust, rats. I mean, it wasn't the best place for me. So I quit that job due to me, you know, just breaking out. It was just really detrimental to my health. And literally, 3 hours later, I was walking in the CRED office, and I had an interview, and they accepted me. So I started the journey with CRED. It was tough because we were the first cohort, so they were learning as we were learning. But it worked. It worked. And me and Arnie, you know, connected and had a good relationship. And he said, man, I want to help you. And so I got someone I want you to meet. So he introduced me to Carl. Carl, like I say, we went to his office. Amazing office. My first sight, I'm like, God, this is something you see on TV, you know what I mean? So, yeah. You know, the first person I've ever met who didn't know me from a can of paint, who really took out the time, genuinely, to figure out who I am. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, it was amazing. Started the journey with Carl, kept in touch. I mean, the guy called me more than some of my family members did. So he just kept pushing me. And I had times where I struggled, you know, with it myself because, you know, dealing with different things, losing friends, you know, dealing with things in the neighborhood, you know, almost getting caught up in myself. But I kept pushing. And I got my diploma, started. The journey with Deloitte was amazing. Scary, but amazing. Yeah. Then from there, about 5 months after I started Deloitte, like he said, I was shot twice. My friend was shot once, and he passed. So that was tough in itself, you know, me dealing with my own physical and mental health, you know, and yeah. So, but Carl was right by my side, Carl and Arnie called me daily. I had an apartment waiting on me waiting on me for when I got home. And I mean, Arnie was trying to furnish my apartment. Hey, you need anything? You come by my, you need movers? Something. I don't know. I mean, just these people are amazing, man. Amazing to my life. There's no place I'd rather be at Deloitte, you know what I mean? I walk into that office and I leave literally everything at the door. And from the managers, cars assistants, to, the janitors, they're all amazing. They treat me like family.
So Brendan, how old are you?
26.
26. And if you heard what Brendan said, he had a rough year or two. I think we've had a rough 26 years. Mm-hmm. And think about what he's had to go through. And I've learned so much from Brendan. Brendan has made me a better individual because you seek to understand and be understood. And I remember going to visit Brendan in the hospital at the University of Chicago, and he broke down in tears and he said, Carl, you guys have no idea how bad it is here. Right? I can't go home. I can't go home. And that's when Arnie came through and found him another place. And my brother was shot 4 days before his 17th birthday. My best friend, who had turned his life around, is now gone. So that's why everybody understands the stories of these men and what Arnie's trying to do. And my journey with Brendan cost us zero. Money wasn't the solution. And people ask me, why did I take this personal? This is not about a program. This is about one by one, hand-to-hand combat and making it personal. And everybody at Deloitte is very proud of Brendan. And like I said, he's made our organization better.
Brendan, thank you for being so brave and sharing your story. You're talking about how these guys are amazing. I think you're amazing. You are an inspiration. And I'm watching all these people from the Deloitte table, and I see how much love they have for you. So it's obviously a two-way street there. So thank you for sharing. Arnie, you had...
I'll leave in a second.
Pat, yeah, there you go.
How's everybody doing?
Great.
My name is Kanoy Ali. I'm the head life coach over at 95th, one of the CRED sites. I used to be a life coach at Iman, Inner City Muslim Action Network, on 63rd in California. When CRED first started with Iman, and I started with them, it was more like the movie Trading Places, where Eddie Murphy kind of like, for the participants, it was like, Eddie Murphy kind of went into the big house and they was like, oh, that's yours. So everything was given, and he almost thought it was too good to be true. So a lot of participants took to that. They were like, well, I'm gonna keep taking as much as I can because this is about to be over. It was a whole thought process that actually had to change from the guys that were actually coming in. They didn't believe that somebody cared enough to get them basic things, breakfast, lunch, and opportunity. You get what I'm saying? It was more so of what do you guys want from us? Like, what do we have to do? Vote for somebody? Do we have to, cast a ballot, give blood, firstborn? What is this that's going on? And in my mind, I'm thinking, like, this is something that the city of Chicago should have done years ago, just an opportunity. When Arnie says just one opportunity has to be given, already we got 17, 18-year-old guys that has lost, over 10 friends. And we talking about guys really experiencing trauma almost like a Vietnam vet. If you could think of a 17, 18-year-old guy that's saying, and I've witnessed being shot 21 times or 14 times, and they get caught with guns consistently, and they face 5, 10 years in prison, and they saying, I would rather be caught with it than without it. Because I know I can't move around. I don't have the money to move around, and the people that's looking to kill me is still out there, and they know where I stay. So it's just a real tough battle that we're fighting, but it's a cry that's being given out because these guys, when they come into our buildings, into our settings, they almost childlike. You can see the relief that they have. Let's say, man, wait, somebody care. I get a decent meal. Somebody is asking about how I'm doing. Our day looks like this. You come in, we stand up, we recite a pledge. Every day we recite a pledge. And the pledge says, I am a man. I pledge as a man to be responsible to myself, my family, and my community. I pledge as a man to give and never take away from my community. And as a participant of this program, I pledge to give as much as I receive. I pledge to respect both peers and staff. We are a team, one unit and one chain. We are only as strong as our weakest link. We succeed by strengthening each other, and failure is not an option. That's how we start our day. Then when we peel that layer back, so we come in with some strength, then we do a check-in. Now in that check-in, you will hear, one, my girl got cancer. Two, my best friend was shot and killed. Three, the police had 3 guns up to my head. Right, that's just in the check-in. That's just a regular one day. That's what happened today. We recently took some guys to Atlanta. This is Memorial Day weekend. On our way back, coming back from Atlanta, everybody had a great time, right? Everybody had a good time. One of the guys that came back, I think the first day he was back, he was shot twice. He didn't want to come back. Like, he was one of the ones like, man, I want to move out of the, and he, when I tell you, very calm, collective, he was shot not in his neighborhood, but in an area that he felt he was safe from. So he's in Roseland. He was shot by Lakeshore Drive, right? Lakefront, at the lakefront. So he was not by his area. Now, he was shot by people that was looking for somebody else. Now, he was shot, then his cousin was killed on the expressway. Now, he got to come in every day and try to kind of deal with, and we as staff have to deal with how to work through this. So what I'm saying is, a lot of problems that we see, therapeutic, like therapy is so necessary, because we talking about jobs, it's just, it's some real life. You got to dig into some layers and peel some stuff back, and then you're going to get to the root of some of their issues. Because even the ones that's out there doing the shooting, if you kind of peel some of their layers back, they're so angry at something. They're so mad at something. I'll tell you a quick story and I'll pass the mic. I had a gentleman in the program, 2 gentlemen in the program. One had a bag on. And the other one, he, doing our check-in, he says, man, I feel so bad. I said, what you mean? What's wrong? He said, that guy, he was our op, man. He was an op of mine. And I kind of, getting to know him, I kind of like him. I said, well, that's good. He said, but, I'm the one that shot him. He said, I don't want to tell him, right? So we're building a space, but to go back, his anger came from, he said he watched his cousin die on the train tracks, get ran over. And they were playing together and something happened and his cousin got caught on the train tracks and he died. And he was so angry that his cousin enemies was this guy, their neighborhood. So he kind of felt like to get back, you know what I mean? So his anger towards them was part of the anger of not being able to free his cousin from the train track. So his payback to help, you know what I'm saying, and memory of his cousin was more so to give that type of thing. What I'm saying is if you have nobody to dig and pull those layers back and answer some of those heartfelt questions that you probably need to deal with in a therapeutic manner, which this is why we have some therapy sessions going on, then you got a lot of people and a lot of problems going on out there. And a lot of these guys deal with that just regularly. But to add to this, you have more people getting caught with guns than ever before. But it's not most of the people getting caught with guns, they really on defense. And what that means is they really just trying to stay safe. Like they have no other way to stay safe than to protect themselves with guns. We understand the police have to protect and serve, and when they come, you know, a lot of guys get shot. The police say they was pulling a gun, but the reality is, and I'm not blaming the police, but the reality is, most of the guys try to throw the gun. But the way the police see it is you reaching, so that means you trying to shoot at me. And that's not always the case. You know, so, and I'm saying that to say we got a gentleman here today who lost a friend about a week ago, who the police said was reaching for a gun. He was trying to throw the gun so he wouldn't get caught because he was a habitual offender. So.
Before we let our next person talk, we do have a question over here to Ann. I think you wanted to ask this young man, Pat. Come on, Pat, pick it up. I do, yes.
First of all, I just want to say God bless all of you here who have shared your stories and all the work you're doing. But I've been listening to all your stories, and in particular what you just said, you know, just a few seconds ago, and I'm just struck by the severe trauma that so many people are dealing with. And I wanted your opinion, you people on the panel. I just started working at Maryville Academy with Sister Kathy, and I've been going around observing all her programs, and she has many that are helping young people like you're describing, including one that transitions young men from the juvenile justice system back into society. And the one thing that she started to do there is treat the trauma first. Before you can find people jobs, before you can help people get their GEDs or any of this other stuff, you really have to deal with the trauma because it's severe. And I just wondered your opinions on this and how you could incorporate this type of mental health, be it into the jail, into your school, Valerie, and what are your thoughts on this philosophy?
Well, you know, at our place, we've identified that a long time ago, and that's why when I tell people, I can teach virtually any skill there. We have amazing cooking programs where we have an Italian chef that teaches, you know, detainees marvelous things. We teach people how to deconstruct buildings, all those things. But at the end of the day, you got to get inside people's head, because if you don't do that, then behavior is going to continue. And it's on multiple levels, and that's why I've spent a great deal of time hiring non-police, non-correctional staff, but mental health staff to come work in my place. And it's why we have this wild range of programming that is focused on cognitive changes and programming there that is very, very different, that tries to go at the underlying problems. And so we do intensive amount of analysis on everybody that comes in the door as far as their mental health needs. And we grade them based on how acute they are, and then different people go into different programming with all the notions of trying to work with their individual issues. Beyond that, though, dealing with folks who there's no way getting around the PTSD issues that are, you know, endemic in certain areas from people that are coming there and into my custody. So we spend amazing amount of times on that as well. The difficulties that we traditionally have in a jail setting is that people are there temporarily waiting on a trial, and so people come and they go, and I can't force people into my programs. And so a lot of people aren't ready to deal with any of these issues on that level. But to your point, unless we get on that level, we're really sort of kidding ourselves. I can teach all these different skills, but if you don't get at the heart of what these issues are, you're really not going to be able to address them. And so it's what we spend, I'd say, the majority of our time dealing with.
Valerie, I think she wanted you to answer that also.
Yeah, I'm glad that Sheriff Dart brought up the PTSD piece. I think that so many of the kids that we have here on the South Side and West Side have significant levels of PTSD, but I have an issue with that term because PTSD kind of implies that this is post-trauma, right? As if there was one isolated incident and now we're post-trauma and we can deal with it. But for a lot of these students and kids on the south side, west side of Chicago, this is ongoing, this is recurring, it's trauma on a regular basis. So for us, we think about how the vision is to be a boarding school, and that'll be great to help to mitigate a lot of the negative factors. But even now, what we're doing, I think, is really unique because we are trauma-informed, and we built our entire curriculum around trauma-informed care and social-emotional learning and mental health. And I think a lot of schools give lip service to that, but because we're a new school, we could really have the luxury of designing everything around that. So thinking about the fact that there are different ways of measuring trauma. One of the most common ways is called the ACE score. So ACEs stand for Adverse Childhood Experiences. And you get an ACE score when you witness trauma, when you've been homeless, when your parents get divorced, all of those different factors add up. And we know that if a child has at least 3 ACE scores, they're almost 3 times more likely to fail a grade. And a child with even 1 ACE score makes up 85% of all behavioral challenges in school. So when we think about the fact that we're talking about violence here with these young adults and people in their early 20s, 10 years ago, these were kids who had behavioral challenges. But that didn't come from nowhere. That came from trauma exposure. So we really have to address that as the root, and we're building our curriculum around that. And there are a lot of things that other schools can do around that as well. So we do have the luxury of being able to start that from scratch, and it's a big focus for us. We purposefully hired school staff that have that background. So our principal or head of school is actually a former psychologist. So I think really tapping into social workers and psychologists and giving them leadership roles in schools is really important. But we're also tapping into great organizations in the community as well. So we're working with the University of Chicago School of Social Work Administration, the Adler School of Psychology, and bringing in individuals to help work as grad student interns as support. So I think other schools that don't have the ability to start a new curriculum like we do can also bring in other resources from the community as well. But it's crucially important.
Pat, I think, did we have one more young man, Arnie, at the cred table that wanted to talk?
Do I say anything?
Because I think your stories are really important, and they're having an impact, and I think it's going to have an impact on everyone who's here tonight, knowing that we all want to do something. Tell us your name.
I'm Charles Clayton. I'm part of the program, and basically without the program, all I knew in life was violence and nothing else. But with the program, I got meaning to life now, and I can see a future now. Be there for my family.
Charles, can I ask you?
Yes.
Arnie talked about how he had asked some of the young men, how much would it take to get you off the streets, and he was shocked to hear $12 and $13, and he wasn't so sure that was the case, and he found out it was. Can you explain to us, when you're in a situation like that where there's violence and you feel like you have no choice, to know that there is another outlet, how many young men like you in the streets of Chicago would take advantage of that?
I mean, a lot. Like, to have somebody on your back that really care, that mean a lot. Like, man, it'll get you far in life. To know that there's someone that's out there that really care about you.
Have any of your friends seen what you've been doing and have wanted to get involved too? Because there are probably a lot of them who are looking at you going, wait a minute, he's doing something.
I mean, where I'm from, like, everybody look at me like, man, dude ain't gonna never change. They see me doing something positive. There's a lot of us in the program now, and they doing better in life. So yeah, I can say that's good that, they changing too.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Carlos Vargas. I am the guy. First of all, I'm a work crew supervisor. So I am the guy that, after they've gone through months of life coaching and mental wellness, it's my job now to help introduce them into the workplace. And I can't stress the importance of this partnership we have with businesses and giving them a chance. I see that every day. I appreciate our partners because that's a word we might throw, or a phrase, a cliche we may use, you know, a chance. We all need a chance. Someone's given us a chance at least once in our lifetime. But a chance for these individuals is life or death. Now, a little background. I spent 10 years in North Carolina working with veterans with PTSD. I'm a veteran myself. I went off to war when I was 19, and again when I was 36. I saw things that the human being should never see or do. I could still smell dead bodies. The trauma. When I came to CRED, and I started working with these young men, and what we see, it might seem common to us. We get up every day, right? We do whatever we have to do to prepare to work, right? And it's okay, no problem. But for some of these young men, it's an unbelievable mountain. It's a challenge. I'm third generation gang affiliated. At the nick of time, something happened and my mother just somehow plucked me out of Chicago. I wound up in New York City. Sometimes I say she took me off the frying pan into the fire, but 2-3 years later, I made it into the military. But I was damaged. I was fractured. I was broken. And the military added to that. And I suffered from severe PTSD. Severe. Very severe. Lost marriages. Couldn't hold a job. I noticed something when I came to CRED. And when we do our check-ins, I noticed, wait a minute. These are PTSD or traumatic symptoms. I know what they're talking about. Believe it or not, our connection is not so much, okay, I'm from the Humboldt Park area and I grew up this way, you from here. Our connection is that we've seen trauma and we've experienced trauma. So now you take somebody like me, right? Someone like our participants, and now we go through a process where we're trying to deal with some of this trauma, and now you're faced with this new environment called structure. You're giving me a chance, but we call it structure. Well, structure to me, I'm a military. I love structure. I love procedures. I love policy. I feel like a fish out of water if I don't have that. But now if you grow up like I grew up, or like they grew up, hey, we did whatever we wanted to do, how we wanted to. Nobody told us what to do. But now these gentlemen have a transition into a job. It is an unbelievable challenge. And when that trauma is not dealt with, the only way we knew how to deal with conflict is, let's go at it. We only know one way to deal with conflict. But now we're trying to teach these young men, wait a minute, let's change behavior. I say all this, and I'm really appealing to those, I'm not sure if there's any companies here. We cannot appreciate, the appreciation goes down deep because I know somebody gave me a chance. I couldn't hold a job. I couldn't deal with it. I was too anxious. I was too much. It was just too much going on in my mind. My mind was going 100 miles an hour. I've seen things. I've experienced things. I've lost loved ones. I lost friends. Now I got to work. So our partners, I see these young men I admire them. I admire them. I've been part of teams that, that we've done the unbelievable things, but to see these young men coming off the street, and I know the strength that it takes, the courage that it takes to just step into the program, and now you're going to let somebody in here. You don't let anybody in here. We spend our lives protecting ourselves. Now you're going to let somebody in here that you have to trust. And then I'm going to have to trust a stranger who says he's going to give me a chance. And I'm going to the workplace. It's huge. I see this every day, and it's a challenge. So I tip my hat. I salute. Sir, what you did for Brandon, we want to see that 1,000,000 times over. It is hopeful. It will work. It's a mentorship partnership that takes place. It is, it's funny because it's almost like sometimes I feel like I'm fathering again. It's work, but it's hopeful. There's a lot of hurt, there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of anger. We can't make sense about a lot of this stuff. But when we come into a workplace where the employer is not an employer, now he's a mentor or she's a mentor. And they understand, they don't have to walk the way we walked. But if you know the human spirit, that's all you need to know, the human heart. How does Carlos work? So we see our young guys going, this is our goal. Our goal is to get them to this place where now they could step into a place where they could be financially stable. But even that is challenging. I'm sure, as Brenda said, it's very challenging. So it's very admirable. But we need these business partners. It's a really working relationship. It's a partnership, a mentorship partnership. It does take a village.
Thank
you. It really does.
Thank you very much. Pat, we have a question over here.
Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. My name is Bridget Banks, and I am the aunt of Ryan Banks. The Ryan Banks Academy is named after my 12-year-old nephew that we lost in May of 2012. And I want to thank everyone for your kindness and your support, and for recognizing that we have to start in our neighborhoods, letting our kids know that we care for them from the day that they come into this world into the day, hopefully, with 90, day 100 when they go out. But sometimes it happens way before then, and when you're not ready, you will never be ready. Ryan was a typical 12-year-old boy. He was growing like a weed. He was just getting into basketball and sports. But my baby was fearless when it came to life and the roller coasters, and he loved his family. And he was the typical 12-year-old. He liked the Dale. He liked the color. He liked the Avengers. And it's funny that I can remember the last 2 days of his life very clearly. I took him to see the Avengers, the first one when it first came out. He thought it was awesome. We were walking home from the show. We went downtown, and he was about to turn 13 in 2 weeks. And we was going to Great America so he could get on the Spider-Man ride. And he could eat off the big people's menu at Fridays. He was really looking forward to that. But unfortunately, on May 19th, he did not get a chance to do that. But I am proud that on the last day of his life, I told that little boy that I loved him, and he said, "I love you." Those were the last words I spoke to my little boy. And I want everyone to know, cherish your children. You don't want this to be you. This should not be anyone. We have to start early to prevent this. But this little boy is leaving a great legacy. Thank you, Val, for your caring. Thank you for understanding, everyone, that you just need someone to believe. When a perfect stranger believes in you and believes in a dream and loves your child that they only met a few months ago, you can do a lot of wonderful things. So I thank you. And Ryan will continue to live through this school and to everyone's generosity. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for you being here, for you listening, and for you caring, and for your TIME. It is so greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I know that's difficult, and what a beautiful thing that this wonderful academy is in his name. That's beautiful. I think we only have 5 minutes left. Is that right? So we want to get some more questions in.
Actually, I'm going to yield because Bridget just addressed exactly the issue I had. Tom and Arnie have done an incredible job explaining that we have an economic problem, not a violence problem. And Carl has shown us how to lead the way by example with Brendan. And Val is the factory that's going to make more Brendans. And I wanted to ask, and maybe if any of the cred guys, my question was going to be to you guys, to ask you how important to you it would be to have an opportunity to live and learn in a safe, warm environment. Although I think Bridget did a pretty good job of saying that Ryan Banks is such the way forward. But if you guys, Ali, you guys have anything to add to that in terms of, what it would mean to have a place to live and learn where you didn't have to worry about these incredible pressures on a daily basis?
My name Brian Perkins. It's definitely important because, it's like Ali said, when we come through those doors in the morning, we go back to kid mode. Nothing to worry about. People be in there goofing off, but we be serious at the end of the day too. You know what I'm saying? It's definitely important though. Like, Crib been a life-changing program for me since I've been in it. I'm 27 and I don't got my high school diploma. Didn't plan on getting it until I got in Crib. You know what I'm saying? I'm 60% through my Penn Foster, almost there. So it's just a life-changing program, man. They got a lot of resources. They definitely care about us. I ain't got nothing but the utmost respect for those people with the program.
Thank you for sharing. Okay, I want to take the few minutes we have left. Oh, I'm sorry. Go right ahead. No, we want to hear you.
All right, my name is Joshua Smith, but it's totally important for the environment, because nowadays people are scared to take different opportunities. Living in our area, like Chicago, people are scared to reach out because of the way it is. When you come in a crib, it's a family. They make you feel welcome. So everything they do, everything they tell you, you gonna believe it, you feel? Because it's coming from the heart, and they genuine people. So that's all I got to say about it.
And that's a lot. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for sharing your stories. Very impactful, and I think you've made your message loud and clear. So I want to use these last few minutes, and maybe I could have each panelist. People are sitting here. We've been touched to hear the stories. We've been inspired by what you do. If you could tell us in a short amount of time as possible, since we're running out, but from each of you, and let's start with you, Sheriff Dart, what can we do, those of us who are sitting here, what can we do to make a difference?
Well, I think tying in what a lot of other people mentioned, jobs are important. A few years back, I wrote an op-ed for Cranes asking the business community to get involved, and quite a few people came forward. Some of them we wove into our program. I have the ability, because I have this population there, where if a business comes to me and says, listen, Tom, I have no issues with someone with a criminal background, but I need them to have the following skills, I can house them in units where I teach them those skills, because I pretty much do it now. We offer more programs than anybody in the country does, as it is, but it can be specific to an actual business. And there's certain units where I'll be honest with you, the biggest criticism I've gotten from the business community is that they can't get people to show up for work and show up on time. And so certain living units, we put alarm clocks in their living units and in their cells to teach people baseline things that you got to wake up at certain times, you have to be prompt, you have to do that, because for many of the people coming to me, they just want somebody who's going to be there and care. And so from the business community, if you have something you want us to work with you on, where we can teach them a skill that then can be transferred out, and we can work with you, because right now we sort of hand people off as it is to other entities to work with on the outside. We're really happy to do that. We're just desperate to get that opportunity for it. And then just beyond that, and beyond the job component, but it's been referenced, this is so much involving the economics. The other part of it is to really stay engaged, and please do not fall for the stuff that gets peddled out there by the political world. This is not easy. It's not going to happen quickly. So don't get caught up in that element of it. There are communities that have been neglected for decades and decades and decades. And so it's going to take a while to get it fixed, but there just has to be that focus on it. And if we do that, we can have results. But as many people mentioned earlier on, guns are everywhere. They're absolutely everywhere. We take more guns off the street than anybody in the country, and yet we still have this. Guns are easy to access. And so it's a complicated issue. It's something that is not going to be addressed by on the federal level. They refuse to do it, and they're not going to do it. And so it is something where we have to take the economics out of it and focus on where we can be impactful. So, I mean, there's things we can do, but we just have to be in it for the long run.
Arnie, what can we do for Chicago Cred?
We're good. I want you to, four quick points. I just hopefully got a sense tonight. I want you to understand the humanity of our men and how much we have in common despite different neighborhoods, different whatever. These are extraordinary leaders in the community. I want you to understand the possibility of redemption. You have a sense for Ali's leadership and what he's doing, and we promoted him. And Ali took a man's life. Ali spent a lot of time locked up. But we can't do this work without Ali and others like him. Secondly, we all have to continue to make ourselves uncomfortable. We ask our men to do some really uncomfortable things every single day. We ask them to bare their soul. We ask them to write their autobiographies. We ask them to go back to school when they've been out of school for 8, 10 years. We ask them to deal with trauma that's been buried forever because everyone has to keep up a hard front. And they do it every day. And if we're not willing to move outside our comfort zones and do some things a little hard for us, if we're not willing to meet them halfway, then it's about breaking cycles. We have to break our cycles of our behavior and of our comfortableness. Third, I just want to emphasize the police have an important role to play, but the police cannot solve this. The clear rate, the amount of clear rate is what percent of crimes that got solved. The clear rate for Chicago in 2017 for homicides, for murder, was 17%. It means 83% get away with murder. The clear rate for just shooting someone, not killing them, is 4 to 5%. Crimes aren't getting solved. We have to give guys a reason to put down the guns. The final thing I'll say is that this is probably the hardest work I've ever done. It's also the most inspiring, and I'm actually wildly hopeful. And this work is not straight up. Transformation doesn't happen overnight. We have good days and we have heartbreaking days. But I'm convinced these men are going to lead the city where we need to go. And Sylvia, we just as a city have to scale. And again, a city of all these resources in downtown, it's only a couple thousand men. It's not 50,000. I'm used to big numbers. The numbers here aren't that big. And if we as a city can't help 2,000 or 3,000 men get to a better place, shame on us.
So we have a complicated problem of violence and crime, but I'm a pretty simple guy, and I think everybody here can help. You heard Arnie refer to these individuals as men. It's a people solution. I want everybody to think about how they got it in this room today. And everybody can help, as simple as mentoring. There's programs out there where you can mentor individuals and help them along. Someone always took an interest in us. We are here because someone, whether it's family, whether it's friends, coaches, mentoring. The great things that Valerie's doing from an education perspective. Jobs don't happen without education. And then the jobs part, okay? Mentoring, education, jobs. It's a people solution. That's the long-term solution. And it may not happen in my lifetime, but there's a lot of young people here. This is the start. It's a journey. Don't overcomplicate it. It's about men. It's about people.
It's hard to beat all those answers. I think everyone did a great job in explaining what needs to happen here. But what Arnie said, we need to be investing in our youth. These are kids who have the ability to do amazing things and are so full of potential. These are the kids that could cure cancer, build amazing businesses, transform their community, but we have to really invest in them and give them a chance. In terms of specifically what Ryan Banks could use from anyone here in this room or listening later, we need more than perhaps some folks on this panel, because we're new and we're a startup and we're doing something really big and bold and audacious, and it's not easy, and it's going to take the community to make this possible. We need corporate support. I'll give you a great example. There's a school in Colorado similar to ours, a boarding school for underserved youth, and they are fully funded by the Honda car company, 100%. So if they can do it in Colorado, we have great companies here in Chicago. We need a partner like that. So if you are at a company, go home, spread the word to your coworkers. We also are looking for corporations who are interested in just bringing our students downtown to job shadow. You can't be what you can't see. So let our kids just come and see your workforce setting and to talk to you and to learn more about what you're doing. And our kids are always looking for mentors, so come and work at our school, give some time, volunteer, and meet our amazing students. And one more connection for you, aside from hearing from Bridget. Thank you for speaking, Bridget. Noah at this table right here, and Noah's mom, Dawn. Noah is one of our founding students, so I'm so honored to have him here today.
Okay, well, I think that about wraps it up. I do want to say that if you get a chance, last week, I think it came out on June 3rd, Rex Hupke from the Chicago Tribune wrote a wonderful, powerful article, and it's a think piece, but he said, when we look back at what we are living in, the time we are living in now with all this violence, we're going to say, how could we survive like that? So we all need to ask ourselves, when we leave, when we go to bed, when we wake up in the morning, what am I doing to make a difference? And that's how we want to end tonight. Hopefully you're inspired to go out and make that difference. Thanks so much for coming tonight.